This is an NJN News special report. Governor Corzine's budget message to the state legislature.
Hello, I'm Jim Hooker. Welcome to NJN's rebroadcast of Governor Corzine's budget message to the state legislature. The governor laid out his spending plan for the next fiscal year. He delivered his speech this afternoon in the Assembly chambers at the State House in Trenton.
Thank you. Thank you. Please. I think I've said that before. That should be the only applause of the day. Although we have one special recognition that I want to make, and I'm so pleased to see all of you here. Reverend clergy and Senate President Cody and Speaker Roberts, Chief Justice Rabner, thank you. Members of the legislature, all of you for being here. Members of the cabinet, former governors, Brendan Byrne, DeFrancisco, and Bennett. By the way, I think we all ought to give a round of applause to Governor Byrne, who's about to celebrate his 85th birthday, and nobody has done a greater thing. If it weren't always like that, Brendan, we all sincerely mean it. You are a terrific part of New Jersey, and your legacy serves us all tremendously well. Thank you for being here. Honored guests and fellow New Jerseyans, every day across New Jersey, across America, millions of people are sitting down at kitchen tables, and they're sorting out their budgets, their family budgets, on the backs of envelopes, pencils, calculators in hand, surrounded by stacks of bills, receipts. Families are figuring out how to balance their income and expenses. And they're doing this amid alarming economic circumstances. You pick up the newspaper and see the national unemployment rate above 8%. You see neighbors losing their jobs, their homes, their health care. People worry about their being next. The economy may not be in shambles, as Warren Buffett remarked last week, but it's clear this is no ordinary recession. And the costs of the economic crisis are exacting a serious human toll right here in New Jersey. People from all walks of life are tightening their belts. Around that kitchen table, every family knows what it means to make tough choices in these tough times. But people also understand the importance of making the right choices. They identify their most important priorities, and they change their spending habits to live within their means and make sure that they can do those things they care most deeply about. That's exactly what those of us in this chamber must do in this budget season. I come before you today to speak candidly and directly about our state's finances. Not just to you, but to all of the people of the state of New Jersey. Make no mistake, because of where the world is right now, we must move in directions we might not otherwise choose. Tough times require that we make right choices and that we do the right thing for the common good. By making the right decisions now, New Jersey can and will emerge from this national economic crisis stronger, sooner, and more prosperous. To that purpose, the budget I am proposing for fiscal year 2010 totals $29.8 billion. That's $1 billion less than the first budget I presented in 2006. Stop and think about it. Every governor since Alfred Driscoll has grown spending over their 4 years. With this proposal, we will have reduced spending 2 years in a row, and we will literally spend less than in the first budget I proposed. This isn't I want to be clear. This isn't a matter of debate or nuance. It's a fact. It's also a measure, unfortunately, of the times in which we live. It's a demonstration that here in Trenton, we are dealing with the state's finances exactly as every family in New Jersey is dealing with theirs. We're living within our means, we're not spending more than we're taking in, and we're making the tough choices to do the right thing. And just like the choices that a family makes around the kitchen table about its spending, the decisions I've made in laying out this budget reflect a clear ranking of my priorities and core values. These priorities and values are the same ones that have guided my administration since I took office. Those values reflect a lifetime of experience and are informed by the voices of our fellow citizens, not just the loudest voices, but those who too often don't have a voice. Yes, we're cutting the size of government because of our values. We have made it a priority to continue nurturing our children, honoring seniors, and protecting the most vulnerable among us. And I want to make it clear that we must maintain these priorities at the same time that we work to minimize the tax burden on our citizens. We've been able to enshrine these values in a leaner budget because for 3 years we've governed responsibly. We've eliminated the gimmicks and one-shots that past administrations used to paper over our state's finances. We reduced and streamlined state government. We funded state employee pensions and the Unemployment Trust Fund. We were the first state in the nation to respond to the recession with a comprehensive economic recovery program. Because we chose to do the right thing yesterday, we're able to keep doing the right things today. In fiscal 09, declining revenues required cuts of over $2 billion in state spending. As it turns out, that was just the start. The global recession took a further toll on our revenues, so we have cut almost $4 billion in baseline spending from this year's budget. But before we cut, we made a value-based judgment to take some things off the table. There are certain parts of our government's work that we must sustain. In New Jersey, we recognize the importance of our children. They are our bright hope for the future. To that purpose, in this budget, we have increased rather than cut classroom funding for K through 12 education. And with the federal government's help, we're giving our children a jump start on a lifetime of learning. The budget funds for pre-K education for 50,000 kids, an important down payment on our commitment to universal early childhood education, is intact. Our increase in classroom funding allows the state to press ahead with a new formula for school aid that is rooted in educational needs, fairness, and not zip codes. Our formula recognizes that half of all at-risk children live outside of Abbott districts. The state's school aid allows communities, rich and poor, urban and suburban, to hire talented educators who fire up our children's minds and imaginations, because here in New Jersey, and I think all of us feel this, we believe that every child has a right to be inspired and challenged every day in schools that are among the best in the world. School aid is just one reflection of the value we have placed on learning. Today, I want to congratulate all of you, again congratulate you, for passing the $3.9 billion school construction program that is about to put 15,000 to 20,000 New Jerseyans back to work while modernizing schools for hundreds. While modernizing our schools for hundreds of thousands of children. Every generation of children has the right to schools that offer a clean, safe, and stimulating environment for learning. And just as we value our kids' education, we also value their health. That's why we've expanded family care programs, include a child mandate, and enrolled thousands more kids and their families, particularly mothers seeking prenatal and postnatal care. Providing health care for our children is a priority in this budget, just as it has been in years past. On this point, I have been clear. When the Bush administration tried to cut 10,000 kids out of New Jersey's family care program, we said no. We went to court and made a federal case out of it. Throwing kids off health care is not the way any of us do business in New Jersey. Now, with the help of key members of the New Jersey's congressional delegation, we can be certain of advancing children's health. And just as with education and health care, we are also spending wisely to improve the lives of children who require placement outside of their homes and families. Our Division of Children and Families has gone from being among the most poorly rated in the country to among the very best. Our budget priorities make it clear. Make it clear. Kids count. We're also protecting seniors in this budget because we believe that as a community, we have a responsibility to honor our parents and grandparents. Not only does this budget preserve the senior property tax freeze, with your help, it expands it. We have also preserved all homestead rebates for senior homeowners and renters. We want to make sure that our parents have a choice of staying in the homes where they have raised their kids, and we want to make sure that our grandparents can live where they're most comfortable and where long-term care is most affordable. Seniors have a right to live in dignity and comfort, and that's why my administration has found ways to increase assistance for home heating and senior health. This budget also reflects the view that when people who've played by the rules fall on hard times, when they get sick or lose their job or stumble into a run of bad luck, government will give them a helping hand to get back on their feet, with a hand up, not a handout. This budget provides that helping hand by maintaining emergency funds for food banks, avoiding cuts to charity care, investing in worker retraining, expanding the earned income tax credit, funding our groundbreaking efforts to stave off home foreclosures through mortgage mediation and loan modification, and by preserving funding for the developmentally disabled and community providers. We must not and we will not balance this budget on the backs of people who, through little or no fault of their own, have been caught in a riptide of this economic tsunami. Let me repeat, even as we cut the cost of government in an unprecedented and historic amounts, we are doing so in the right way, the way that sustains our abiding commitment to those core values. Again, nurturing our children, honoring our seniors, and protecting the most vulnerable. These are the basic values I've had for the past decade as I've fought for New Jersey families on the floor of the United States Senate and here in the State House. Throughout those years, I've guided my judgment by doing what is best for New Jerseyans, whether the question has been balancing this budget or others, or sending soldiers to war, or holding corporations accountable. I may not always have done what's popular, but you can be damn sure I've always done what I thought was right. But it's not just me I take pride in. It's the administration of the people with whom I work. Even in the face of this dire financial circumstance, people have stayed true to our core values. They've made tough decisions to get to where we are in today's budget. From the cabinet members on down, this administration has refused to look for the easy way out. Even so, I don't need to remind you that the current economic crisis has a real cost. It's taken a sharp toll on our revenues, as it has in every other state across the nation. The difference in New Jersey is weathering the storm with better outcomes is a real possibility. Our unemployment rate is below the national average. And as of January, at least 18 states had higher jobless rates than New Jersey, often significantly higher, often in places that compete with us for business. Our incomes are nearly the highest in the nation. And while our budget gap is among the larger, We are managing that challenge without shuttering government like California, or missing a payroll like Kansas, or ignoring the unemployed like South Carolina. Now let's lay out the numbers. Let's lay out the basic budget numbers. Fiscal year, which runs through June, the state will take in about $30 billion, about $3 billion less than we originally planned. In the coming fiscal year 2010, we're projecting base revenues of only $28.5 million. Even with important help from the federal government, the declining revenue meant we had to make deep cuts, as I previously said. With respect to the budget cuts, there are two ways to compare the numbers. In absolute terms, as I outlined, or in terms that reflect baseline growth. In absolute terms, $3 billion is what we have to bring down to balance the budget. In baseline growth, we need a staggering $7 billion in spending and revenue solutions. Staggering. As you can all appreciate, baseline growth is a more practical measure of the state's budget gap. Baseline numbers include increases that are mandated by statute, approved by contract, or negotiated or executed by the courts. Contractual wage increases, for instance. A baseline comparison also includes increases in health care and energy costs, supplemental school funding, debt service increases, and the court-mandated actions that increase child welfare expenses. You know, that family sitting around the kitchen table sort of understands the real pressures of baseline growth. Their health care costs go up every year. Their energy costs soared in 2009, and the cost of nearly everything else, from food to child care to college tuition, continues to rise. State budget's no different. In fact, if we did nothing to curtail growth or adjust our contractual, statutory, and court-mandated obligations, the fiscal year 2010 budget would come in just under $36 billion. That's a long way from 29.8, a long way. Fortunately, President Barack Obama understood the pressure on states to meet these shortfalls while still keeping teachers in the classroom and police on the street. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act provides New Jersey about $2 billion in aid to be used for current operations on education and health care. Surprise. Still leaves a $5 billion gap in the budget, which we have attacked with $4 billion in cuts to programs, rebates, pension payments, and state worker wages. In all, there are over 850 line items in the budget that have been cut. The largest cuts come from reductions and scaling back of homestead rebates by $500 million, and reducing by another $500 million payments to the pension fund. And I'm proposing to save $400 million in personnel costs through the wage freeze and furloughs for employees. This approach calls for shared sacrifice, but I believe it is far better for our employees to share in these reductions and continue working than it is for savings to be achieved by the layoff of up to 7,000 workers. It's most certainly is better to keep people at work and insured than alternatively in unemployment lines and on the Medicaid rolls. I'm sure state workers understand at a personal level the basic household principle, just as you all do, that when a family's income drops, everybody has to tighten their belt. We all have to share the responsibility of keeping our financial house in order. Now, let me take a moment to briefly describe some of the options we sought to balance through this budget in hundreds of hours of meetings over the past few months. As I said, 850 lines of various cuts. In these discussions, we would have preferred not to reduce rebates or pension contributions, but we chose to preserve our children's health care and education funding. We would have preferred not to cut funding for the arts and humanities, but we chose in this financial emergency not to close hospitals or eliminate senior prescription drug assistance. We didn't want to cut funding for tourism advertising and beach replenishment, but we chose to maintain safe neighborhoods, safe highways, and homeland security. During these discussions, even as we cut spending and then cut some more, we also came to a decision that we had to preserve as much property tax relief as possible. Given the severe financial pressure middle-class New Jersey homeowners are experiencing. For instance, this budget has less than a 2% cut in municipal aid, a small amount in comparison to other line items, but one that recognizes that municipalities took a big hit last year and also has impact on property taxes. Further, in order to help municipalities balance their budgets and stabilize property taxes, I recommended the much-debated optional pension deferral. This deferral will provide many communities with enough breathing room to avoid layoffs of police and firefighters. Following the same reasoning, my budget preserves homestead rebates for 1 million moderate and middle-income families earning $75,000 or less. 100% for people below $50,000, two-thirds for people earning between $50,000 and $75,000. Protecting rebates as much as possible is consistent with one of the most basic priorities of my administration, providing direct property tax relief on a progressive basis. With this budget, my administration will have provided more direct property tax relief in 4 years than any governor in New Jersey's history. Nearly $7 billion put directly back into the pockets of homeowners. This substantial commitment recognizes the heavy burden property taxes place on New Jersey families. It also recognizes the power and traditions of home rule. Obviously, no governor can single-handedly fix New Jersey's local property tax problem. Our state's 566 towns and 616 school districts need to rationalize their cost structure and hold spending under the cap. They need to share and consolidate services. Till these actions broadly take hold, the underlying problem will remain. Simply put, New Jersey has too many layers of government. To the credit of many, the process of restructuring is gaining momentum across the state, and we will continue to promote consolidation and shared services wherever and whenever they make sense. And there are incentive dollars in this budget to do just that. In the meantime, however, rebates remain the primary tool by which the state can ease the property tax burden on individual citizens. That's why we should restore the rebates for higher income families as soon as the recovery of state revenues allows. Make no mistake, $1,000 check is more than meaningful for families who are working out their finances around the kitchen table. Federal government decided $400 and $800 was a meaningful amount. Many of those who receive the rebates are seniors. We know it's absolutely true that our seniors look to these rebates. And combining both their senior freeze and homestead rebates, many receive as much as $2,500. And as family members lose jobs or see their hourly wages fall, the number of taxpayers making less than $75,000 grows. For these citizens, rebates count. To help pay for the rebates, we proposed eliminating the property tax deduction next year on state income taxes for everyone but seniors. Now, as I commented, New Jersey faces difficult challenges, but I believe from a better position than many states. One of the reasons is that together we've taken serious steps toward fiscal responsibility. And I really do mean that. Together we have moved significantly forward in budgetary actions over the last 3 years. I think, as all of you understand, for the last 15 or 20 years, New Jersey's budgetary decisions have often gone in another direction, reflecting often expediency rather than responsibility. For many of those years, our government chose to meet constitutional obligations to balance the budget by using one-shots and gimmicks. Whether it was raiding the unemployment trust fund, which it did for a long time, borrowing to fill unfunded pension liabilities, or securitizing tobacco settlements for current spending, these gimmicks and others undermine the state's long-term financial strength and stability. At the time, they were easy fixes. They didn't require tough choices about what the state could or could not afford. There were actions that didn't require telling the public the truth. Even worse, they saddled future generations with the cost of that irresponsibility. With your help, and I mean that, with your help, I've stopped it. You can't correct all of the bad decisions of the last 20 years and 38 months, but the steps we've taken have put our state's finances on a more solid ground. Over the past 3 years, we've contributed more money to the public pension system than did our predecessors in the previous 15 years combined. Regrettably, in the current crisis, we need to temporarily reduce that pension funding so that we can sustain our first priorities, our children, seniors, and the most vulnerable. In better times, as I've said before, such an action would be unacceptable. But this is a time of unprecedented economic stress. It's the right choice to make. Similarly, over the 14 years before I took office, repeated raids of the Unemployment Trust Fund, totaling nearly $5 billion, were used to balance the state's operating budget. My administration stopped those raids, and in fact, we've been spending $400 million, which avoided sharply higher payroll taxes, which would have been over $650 million cumulatively, to be exact, to this point, that would have fallen hardest on small business. The Unemployment Trust Fund is now under even greater stress as the economy weakens and more claims are filed. And it would take as much as $500 million, maybe more, in additional spending to avoid a dramatic payroll tax increase. We cannot make that big of payment while still maintaining our priorities and preserving property tax relief. But we will make a significant payment that will soften the impact on employers. And we will also seek legislation to require a tax decrease when the fund recovers in a growing economy. In this budget, we continue in our effort to make state government do more with less and to hold ourselves accountable to the taxpayer. My administration has reduced the payrolls of the state and its authorities by almost 7,000 employees. We've eliminated departments. We've negotiated with public employees and asked them to contribute to the cost of their health care. We've extended the retirement age to 62 from 55 and capped the pensions of new state workers. We recognize that sustainable employee benefit programs require serious restructuring to avoid future breakdowns. The measures we've taken will save the state and local governments $6.4 billion over the next 15 years. These dollars count in a year like this. This kind of restructuring needs to be adopted across all levels of government in New Jersey. We've scrubbed departments for inefficiencies, line by line, and implemented consolidations. We've sold cars, cut up state credit cards, moved out of half-filled leased warehouses. By measures big and small, we've reshaped and resized state government. We've also confronted and put an end to the entrenched ways of doing business in the State House. Together, we ended Christmas tree spending. We approved constitutional amendment to give voters a voice in state borrowing. And by executive order, I required that recurring expenditures matched with recurring revenues. Now, strict compliance with that order this year would require making the tax increases permanent. Since I don't want to support permanent tax increases, I'll be making a technical change to that order, but it deals with permanency of taxes. Other governors have talked about doing all of these things. I did them. This budget continues a four-year pattern of making the right choices, choices that may not be politically popular today, but which put our state on a stronger footing for tomorrow. In a time of crisis, we must all share in the responsibility for balancing our finances. And that's why I'm asking those who are among the most fortunate among us, the 1% of New Jerseyans with incomes of $500,000 or more, to carry a little more of the burden. To this end, I am proposing a one-year only rate increase of 0.75% for those earning more than $500,000. This new revenue, along with small increases in alcohol, less beer, and cigarette taxes, will allow us to finish closing that $7 billion gap. As I've said repeatedly, the unprecedented circumstances of our national economic crisis requires choices we might not otherwise make. Our responsibility requires us to have the courage to meet these challenges deliberatively, honestly, and with compassion and good judgment. And that is precisely what we have tried to do in crafting this budget. We faced down a $7 billion shortfall with roughly $4 billion in spending cuts, $2 billion in federal aid, and $1 billion in new revenues. That left us with $29.8 billion in which to prioritize our children, our seniors, and those who play by the rules but find themselves in dire straits. I'm asking you all to review the proposed budget, offer alternatives where you find them, as long as those alternatives honestly meet the challenges of full funding, meet legal requirements, and fit within the priorities laid down. I welcome ideas from everyone. I only ask that the ideas be real, be specific, and be fiscally responsible. The last thing that New Jersey needs in today's environment is political posturing. Posturing is not going to save one job, it won't help one family with property taxes, and it won't improve a single school or save a single business. As I close, let me be clear. This budget is one part only, of our responsibility to meet head-on the challenges of the global economic crisis. It's not our first step, and I assure you it won't be our last. Last fall, when the banking and credit sectors collapsed, my administration was ahead of the curve in dealing with the global economic crisis. We were the first in the nation to pass a comprehensive economic plan. I thank the legislature. Did a great job for your forceful and timely response, passing 9 pieces of legislation that made up that recovery package. Our mortgage mediation and modification programs is beginning to stabilize our state housing sector. And now other states and the federal government are making similar efforts. With our Invest New Jersey initiative, we offered a $3,000 grant for every new job created and sustained for at least a year, along with a sales tax exemption for the purchase of new business equipment. Get this. In the 10 weeks since that grant program has been in place, we've received over 800 applications representing 20,000 jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. Congratulations to all of you. The most important part of that is each of those 20,000 people is another New Jerseyan who has the opportunity to wake up every day knowing that he or she has a job. We've also reformed New Jersey's corporate tax code to make our state more business friendly. We enabled business to carry forward tax loss benefits for up to 20 years. We eliminated the throw-out and regular place of business rules that penalize companies headquartered in New Jersey. We enacted permit extension provisions. We accelerated over $4 billion in school construction and infrastructure projects that will put tens of thousands of people to work. We created a clean energy fund and put in place incentives for public investment in energy efficiency. All of these measures will cushion us against the blow of this global recession. These actions may even produce growing revenues for future state budgets and make it easier for future governors. Now, I've taken some heat from our neighbors, particularly up north. I've even heard some of them accuse us of trying to steal their companies. I get accused of a lot of things, but this is one offense I will willingly cop to. Let's be clear. Our economic recovery plan sends a clear and unequivocal message to employers. New Jersey is a great place to do business. And we're not done. When we move legislation to expand the urban hub tax credits, when we pass the Revenue Allocation District Act, when we move forward on allowing licensed site professionals to certify brownfield cleanups, we'll lay a more will lay a more secure foundation for New Jersey's strong economic recovery. When the global and national economy rebounds, New Jersey will be in a stronger position. We'll be at the front of the line. We'll be ahead of our neighbors and our competitors. We will prosper tomorrow because of the decisions we make today. Now, I'd like to close by citing President Obama, who reminded us 2 weeks ago in his address to Congress that we are in the eye of an economic storm, the likes of which we haven't seen since the breadline days of the 1930s. That said, with a strong national recovery program, with a true partner for New Jersey and the White House, we will come through this storm. While today's crisis is challenging and often painful, most particularly for our people, we will pull together as a community and a nation and build for a more prosperous tomorrow. History is clear, really is. The economy will turn, markets will turn, job growth will return. With the talent, the work ethic, and the strong character of the people of New Jersey, we will lead the way out of this recession. I believe in our common desire to do what is right. I hope and expect to see that spirit reflected in the final budget, a budget that does value children, values seniors and the most vulnerable, and asks a little more from the rest of us. I thank you for your attention. I look forward to working with you. God bless each of you. God bless New Jersey.
Hello, I'm Jim Hooker. You've been watching NJN's rebroadcast of Governor Corzine's budget message to the state legislature. We're going to take a short break from our coverage. When we return, we'll present the legislative response to the governor's speech. Hello, I'm Jim Hooker. Welcome back to NJN's coverage of Governor Corzine's budget message to the state legislature. The governor delivered his spending plan for the next fiscal year beginning July 1st earlier today at the State House. Following the address, NJN presented the legislative response. That segment of our program was hosted by NJN senior political correspondent Michael Aron.
Jim, thanks very much. I'm with the 4 budget officers of the legislature, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. The Democrats are Senator Barbara Buono of Metuchen and Assemblyman Lou Greenwald of Voorhees. The Republicans are Senator Tony Bucco of Boonton and Assemblyman Joe Malone of Bordentown. Senator Buono, let me start with you. What do you think of this budget?
Well, you know, we're in the middle of an economic crisis. It's a worldwide crisis, and it's caused our revenues coming into the state to spiral down into a downward trajectory. I think the governor delivered a harsh dose of reality that if anybody thinks that this is about to reverse itself anytime soon, it's not within the realm of possibility. It's going to be a challenging budget to fill the budget hole and still preserve those programs that people have come to rely upon and depend upon. But I think the governor certainly made a good start. He's preserving a lot of the services that are near and dear to my heart, and obviously the governor's. We haven't touched any programs with respect to seniors. We've actually expanded funding for education at a time, to put it in context, when the actual pot of money in this budget that we start out with is slightly less than we had to start with 4 fiscal years ago. So it is going to be a challenging task.
Senator Bucco, what do you think of the set of choices the governor has made?
Well, you know, he delivered a tough budget message, and it's going to hurt the people. But let me say this to you, Mike, that nothing is going to be off the table. Everything is on the table to look at, and through this budget process that we're going to go over the next couple of months, we're going to look at every line item and see where we can cut. I mean, he talked about a $29.8 billion budget, but does that figure in the $2 billion that he's getting from the federal government, the stimulus package? That brings that up to 32.8. You're back up to the same budget that we had. There was no cuts.
I think he did figure the $2 billion in, because he said we have a $7 billion shortfall. I'm cutting spending by $4 billion. We get $2 billion from the federal government, and we're raising taxes by $1 billion.
Well, I mean, cutting. He talked about cutting, but yet the pension fund is being cut additional monies. Is that a cut, or are you just holding back? So it's questionable.
Assemblyman Greenwald, your basic take on this budget.
the budget's a reality check. It's the same crisis that people are facing day to day in their households, but I think it preserves the core values of what's important in New Jersey. 40% of this budget goes to education, which is an investment in our future. There is no cut to charity care, which is a recognition of the second largest employer in the state hospitals. It also recognizes the economic crisis where people are losing their jobs. They may be uninsured. And at the same time, it's putting tens of thousands of people to work, stimulating our economy by creating jobs through school construction and using federal stimulus dollars to build roads and bridges. So I think it's an appropriate balance, at the same time preserving the most vulnerable in our society.
Assemblyman Malone.
Well, I think the first thing we should have done to the public is actually apologize for the kind of mismanagement and misspending that's occurred in this building over the last 8 years. Look, I had the opportunity over the last few days to read through the last 8 to 10 budget messages, and they've all said the same thing, made the same promises as we heard today. We need to get New Jersey started on a new track, a new day. I would have liked to have seen the governor today have two messages. One about the short-term impact on how we were using the stimulus money, and then the second track would have been how we're going to resurrect the economy of the state of New Jersey, how we're going to put middle-class families back into some semblance of an organized situation where they can be secure in their houses, secure in their jobs. We have not done that. We've had a culture of spending in this state, borrowing in this state, and doing all of the wrong things to keep New Jersey families safe and secure. All people have to do, if they think I'm kidding about the same rhetoric year after year, go back, and if you have some time, look at the previous budget messages of McGreevey and Cody and Corzine. The same failed promises, the same failed programs have been enacted year after year with the same result: higher taxes, more pain for the general public of the state of New Jersey.
Let's get a Democratic response to that, Senator.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Assemblyman Malone that we can't look at this budget in isolation from the governor's economic stimulus plan in terms of long and short-term goals. You'll remember, it's become very fashionable to criticize New Jersey, but the fact is, back in October of last year, the governor called an economic special session where he had an economic stimulus plan and stabilization plan that was really the first in the nation. It's a model that other states have emulated, creating jobs with the Invest New Jersey by allowing for tax incentives that encourage capital growth and employment as well. I'm proud that I was the sponsor of that bill.
Let's get a Republican reaction to that.
Sure.
The governor did take some credit today for this economic recovery program that he pushed through the legislature this fall, the $3,000 credit for each new job created. He said there have been 20,000 jobs applied for under that. Is that an accomplishment or not?
Well, and first of all, I like to see that happening, because I'll tell you what, talking to business people that I do business with and all, $3,000 doesn't even cover the cost of their medical insurance. It's not that much of a stimulus. We have seen businesses moving out of this state over the last 7 years. It's unbelievable. 4 businesses that I do business with last week alone announced that they were moving. One to Kentucky, one to North Carolina, one to Chicago, because they cannot continue to live in this state with the onerous taxes, fees, and whatnot that are thrown on them.
Is there anything in this budget that exacerbates that problem as you see it?
No, in fact, I said to the governor this morning before we came in, we have to do more for businesses. We're losing people. People cannot afford to live in this state any longer. We see that we're losing 60,000 a year. We've lost 2 million jobs in this state here in the last 2 months. I mean, you cannot continue to do this and expect to have a balanced budget. I mean, if the revenue is not coming in, we can't spend. And he asked us for ideas of what they're doing. 2 years or 3 years ago, what it was, we had a bipartisan committees meeting all summer long, came up with recommendations. They did not listen to them at all. We cannot continue on this road. 7 years of gimmicks and 7 years of crisis budgets.
Assemblyman Greenwald, you wanted to jump in.
I don't see this budget as same old, same old. It's the second budget year after year where there's been a reduction in state spending. That hasn't happened in any of our lifetimes before. You have a situation where for the first time where people have talked about state workers and what did they do, this governor stood up to the state workers and said, look, we're all going to pitch in. He's asked for furloughs. He's asked for wage freezes. The reality is the governor talked about it today. You have 567 towns and 616 school districts, and unless they follow the lead of asking in these tough times for everybody to pitch in, the problem that exasperates businesses, the reason why New Jersey is unaffordable is not because of the income tax or the corporate business tax. There's a business event going on right after this where they are honoring legislators like me on the Democratic side for the improvements we've made to the culture here in New Jersey for the business community. People feel overtaxed in New Jersey because of the layers of government and the property tax problem, and that's why people leave here. Until we get off the addiction of property taxes to pay for local government, this problem will never improve. People like Joe Malone and I have talked about that, and really that needs to be the focus. That needs to be done in a bipartisan effort, and when we tackle that issue, that's when the condition of New Jersey will get better.
Assemblyman Malone.
I don't envy the job that Lou and Barbara have to do in this year's budget, but I'm going to tell you, all they need to do is look back at what was said in the previous year. It's the same. We made the same promises, the same cuts, the same guesstimates. It's all been wrong.
Let me ask you a question about state workers. You're not far from Trenton. You must have some state workers in Bordentown.
I have a lot of state workers, Mike.
What do you think about this proposal for 1 a month furlough days and a wage freeze?
I think it discriminates against lower wage individuals who work for the state of New Jersey. Something has to be done to do that in a gradual fashion. The higher wage people ought to be paying more into this pain quotient that we're talking about. I can't see a mother who's making $35,000 with a child at home having 12 furlough days, not getting paid. That is a much larger percentage of her life than it is if somebody's making 140 grand a year.
Well, then how do you feel about the governor's proposal to increase the income tax by 0.75% for 1 year only on people earning more than $500,000 a year?
You probably ought to ask the governor that question, because he has been very much adamantly opposed to that issue up until this year. And Lou and I were actually on the same side in this issue a few years back to try to help education. We thought we could raise $1 billion to help education. We're still trying to find $1 billion that we're supposed to go to education. We in New Jersey cannot find our way. Somebody has to light a candle in the dark to lead us out the door so that we can have a proper budget, properly focused, so that the people in New Jersey are going to pay horrendously additional taxes this year because of the mismanagement in this building over the last 8 years. And anybody who...
Not 16, 8.
Well, all you need to do, Mike, is go back and look at the budgets over the last 10 years, going back into the Whitman administration. Was money spent back in the Whitman administration? Absolutely, but there was money to be spent. We did not, as a state, ever do anything to recover from 9/11, and we just kept spending and borrowing, tobacco bonds, you name what.
I feel Senator Buono wanting to respond to you.
You know, I think it's a mistake to look backwards. We could all look backwards, and there's a lot of criticism to go around to both political parties, but we really need to look forward, and that's really what today is all about, and what the governor's budget is part of an overall plan to move us forward. That, in conjunction with his the stimulus plan that he discussed at length during his address, will help position New Jersey so that when the economic forces that we have no control over begin to rise, New Jersey will come out of the box quickly and strong.
Let me ask Barbara a question. I'm going to hand you the budget messages for the last 10 years and some comments I picked out of those budgets. I want you to look at them and tell me what's different in this year's budget message than was given the last 8 years under McGreevey, Cody, and Corzine.
You'll have to do that after we're done, but we don't have time for her to do it now. I want to ask her a question. One of the things that was a surprise in this message, and there was only one sentence about it, was that in order to help preserve rebates for low-wage earners, the governor is going to eliminate the property tax deduction on the state income tax, or proposes doing that. I don't know how much for non-seniors. That could be a lot of money in there. Is that a big revenue item?
Well, yeah, and the fact, I think that the reasoning behind focusing on that is because it is very regressive. The value of that increases as your income increases, so it was felt that that was the way to go.
So this is another shift from the wealthy to the low-wage earner?
It's a one-year event, and it is no seniors are involved whatsoever on this as well. But
Did you hear that line? The property eliminate the property tax deduction on the state income tax.
Yes, Mike. But you know what? Going back several years ago, a good friend, Senator Greenwald, said we have to have the courage to spend. Well, let me tell you, we need the courage not to spend. We need the courage to cut this budget. We need the courage to make sure that our middle class and our seniors and all are protected, and our kids are protected in their schools and getting a decent education. We have to have the courage to make the right decision this year with this whole budget.
And you don't think that the governor laid out the right set of choices?
I think we have to go even further with our choices on this. Again, he asked us for our comments. When we go through this budget line by line, through the budget process, we will make our recommendations.
Mike,
I want to get Lou in. Go ahead, Lou. Tony Bucco reminded us of your line that we need the courage to spend. I guess that was a few years back.
Yeah, I think it was more accurately the courage to invest in things like cancer research that has grown our economy, to invest in hospitals that is the second largest employer, to invest in school construction, which is the creation of an asset. But at the same time, we need to show restraint. And as I said earlier in this interview, that restraint comes from everybody sharing their pain. This one-year suspension of the property tax deduction for your income taxes, for people making the low-wage earners, it's about $50 a year. For somebody making $250,000 a year, it's $500. Right now, we all need to pitch in and share this burden. It's a one-year suspension.
Does either of you know how much revenue it brings in?
$400 million.
I'm confused on that. Now, if we're going to allow people to take the property tax deduction on the income tax, that could be a significant amount of money to average New Jerseyans.
It's not. We just said it's for the people that you're worried about, the state worker making $30,000, it's $50 on their deduction. For people making $250,000, it's $500 on their deduction.
You got what you wanted, which is not an elimination. You were against the total elimination of the rebates, and you've gotten preservation for people earning under $75,000 a year.
Mike, again, it's not what I wanted. It's I give this governor credit. He started his message with we were going to preserve him for seniors. And in a quiet moment, he sat down with me and talked about why I think it's so important. Barbara Buono was kind enough to call me the day the statement was made because we had a quiet conversation about it last year. We've just spent tens of millions of dollars to help people make their mortgage payments to avoid foreclosure. For the people that Barbara and I represent, and I think that Joe and Tony represent, for many of us, our property tax payment is now more than our mortgage and interest combined. So this is a one-year commitment to help keep this afloat. And again, you heard the governor say, when the economy turns around, even for those making $100 and $150, which is New Jersey's middle class, that $1,000 is important.
We have just 1 minute left. Let me ask each of you in 15 seconds, is there going to be a bipartisan sense in Trenton on this budget, or are we going to have gridlock?
You should start over there.
I'll start with you.
Well, you got my support, and we're going to, we're going to sit down and have public hearings, and we're going to start the process. It's not going to be rubber stamped. The governor wants us to continue to work on it. We're going to hear from the public. We're going to come back with suggestions.
Senator?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think that I'm going to attempt to achieve that in the Budget Committee on my side of the aisle. I think that in order to get through this, we have to present a united front. We need solutions, and people in New Jersey want solutions, and hopefully that can be bipartisan.
Senator Bucco.
Yes, we are going to try it on a bipartisan effort to get this through. But I have to say this, we are not going to support any tax increases.
Assemblyman.
Look, like the other day when we had a budget hearing, in a bipartisan way, we supported the issue of the tax amnesty to try to get some money into this. Lou and I will cooperate where we can cooperate, but I'm going to tell you, I'm really concerned about raising taxes in this climate, especially on middle-class people.
All right, Joe Malone, Tony Bucco, Barbara Buono, Lou Greenwald. Thanks very much. That's it for the legislative response to Governor Corzine's fiscal year 10 budget message. I'm Michael Aron in the Assembly Chamber. Jim Hooker, back to you.
That concludes NJN's rebroadcast of Governor Corzine's budget message and the legislative response. But stay tuned, as we'll have more on the governor's address up next on NJN News. I'm Jim Hooker. Thanks for joining us.